Hello, this is Bethany Yamas. This is my final video project, What is Dual Language? Dual language is an enrichment model of language education. Instruction of curriculum is given through two languages instead of just one. The students receive support for their first and their second language through puberty, which avoids the cognitive developmental shutdown. Developmental and enrichment concepts are combined, which creates a program where curriculum is studied through these two languages, and it develops and expands cross-cultural ways of thinking. Dual language education can be provided through two-way or through one-way. Both of them are highly effective, and it leads to high academic achievement for both the majority and the minority students. There are three non-negotiable components of dual language. The first one is that 50% of the instructional time must be performed in the target language or the partner language, and this helps to ensure that the students are exposed to that because the majority language is all around them, and so they're going to pick that up and they're going to hear that more, but this holds the place of the target language just so that they get that exposure. The second component is that it's the separation of the two languages for instruction. And the authors, Collier and Thomas, of our text that we used for this course, they discussed the research that was done on transitional bilingual classes, and they talked about language switch. They said that teachers who teach these classes, they are speaking in one language, and then they would switch to the opposite language for clarification, for comprehension, then they would switch back again. And what the research showed was that the students would not pay attention, and they did not engage their cognitive faculties in order to understand the new language just because they already knew the teacher was going to translate for them. And so research shows that that's just not effective. At the beginning, the students who are first learning the language, it's very common for them to hear in the target language and then respond in their first language. But as time goes on, they become a lot more competent, and the teacher is able to help to refine that so that they are responding and performing their tasks in the target language. The third non-negotiable component is the commitment. Pre-K or kinder through 12th grade. Most schools at least go for that pre-K through 5th or 6th grade commitment. And it is expanding into the junior high in some cases and all the way through high school in other cases. It is best if they have that exposure all the way through 12th grade. Dual language has a shared leadership between the stakeholders. What that means is that the principals, administrators, teachers, other school staff, parents, and the community all have a shared responsibility for the program. Their main responsibility as a shareholder is to defend the dual language program. There is always political opposition against bilingual education, and it is the responsibility of all involved to defend the program and to consistently and constantly be working to make it better so that the program can thrive and be successful. That also applies to the funding, that all of the shareholders must work and be creative in trying to find funding and work together. It's a shared responsibility. Dual language has three core goals. The first one is bilingualism or biliteracy. The second goal is high level of academic achievement in both languages. And the third goal is sociocultural competence. The authors of our text for this course, Collier and Thomas, they identified what is known as the achievement gap in their early research that they performed. This achievement gap is the gap between the monolingual learners and the language learners, that the gap of academic achievement either increases or decreases between them. And what they found in their research that held consistent over the last 28 years of research that they have performed is that the language learners, when they were immersed in a dual language program, after the 5 to 7 years of language acquisition that is necessary in order to perform at grade level to master grade level content, that the language learners outperformed their monolingual counterparts. Then the other language learners who were placed directly into mainstream English classes, in sharp contrast, they fell off. Their red line goes right to the bottom, and in the book they talked about that a lot of them drop out of high school. By the time they get to high school, they weren't around in order to give the data at the end because they had already left the program. There are several components that are necessary to implement a dual language program successfully. At the top of the list would be an effective administrator, and an effective administrator is one who is a courageous leader who has a social justice mindset, which they are strong about having equity for all of the stakeholders in the program. They are also instructional leaders, which means that they are strong enough that they can lead their teachers and they can co-teach with their teachers and they can learn together as they move through, but they're not afraid to go in, and they can go in to the classroom and help the teachers to know what to do to be better. Also, they value all of the stakeholders, and that must be something that is actively done and seen, that they value the stakeholders. They also must be great planners. They have to be able to plan the program even before implementation begins, and they must be able to continue to plan effectively to help the program to develop and to become better as they go. The second point is the school culture. The school culture must be supportive, collaborative, and it holds a shared leadership with the parents, the teachers, and the community members. That it must be welcoming to all, and it must be an environment where people feel comfortable and they know that their voice is heard and they don't feel afraid to share their voice. Staffing. The principal should be very actively recruiting highly qualified staff, and they must be the most effective staff for the position. And so that would depend on the populations that you have and the demographics of your school and your classes, how they're built, to be able to find the most effective teachers for that demographic. And they definitely should not be afraid. They should have a long vision and not be afraid to learn and continue their own education. That leads us into the next bullet point, which is the training. And the training it should be intensive professional development, and it's continual, and it goes throughout the duration of their tenure at the school. They must constantly be seeking to learn more and to be better at what they're doing. Funding is the last bullet point on there, and all of the stakeholders must defend the program, and they must all work together to find creative ways to fund the program, because resources is one of the biggest struggles that I hear from teachers, that they don't have enough resources, and they definitely need to have the resources provided in order to be the most effective that they can be, and they must be good quality resources. One of the best resources for dual language education are the guiding principles for dual language education. Those are 7 strands or 7 components that, when implemented correctly, it helps to ensure the success of your dual language program. And they actually have rubrics that you can rate yourself to say how well you're doing on that strand, and if there's room for improvement, which usually there is. And so the first strand talks about the program structure. And the program structure is having an effective administrator of the program. It talks about the visions and goals and the equity in the school environment, and then developing and refining the program. The second strand is the curriculum, and so it talks about that they are aligned with the state standards, and that they have a bilingualism and a biliteracy vision that is driving the program, and that is one of the main goals of it. The third strand is instruction, and instruction must occur. It must be a 50-50 or a 90-10, but a minimum of 50% in the target language, and that is, like we discussed before, to protect that target language and to give it appropriate exposure so that the students can learn the target language. Number 4 is assessment and accountability, and that is assessment of the students and of their progress, and it is also assessment and accountability of the program and how are we doing in our program. Are we the most effective that we can be? And it is that continual returning and looking and talking and refining of the program that makes it better. The 5th strand is culture and professional development. It's recruitment and retention of highly qualified staff. And so building that culture and that high quality professional development and that continual professional development, that is what you would measure on that fifth strand to see how are you doing. On the sixth strand is family and community. That is that continual interaction with families and the community and the support of them and being open so that they feel welcomed and that they feel that they are shareholders of the program and owners of it, which they are. And the seventh strand is the support and the resources. And it talks about the school being welcoming and encouraging, and that it should have short-term evaluations and long-term evaluations of the program, and it should include all of the stakeholders. In summary, I would like to briefly mention some final thoughts about dual language education. One of the key points that the authors Collier and Thomas talked about was the PRISM model research that was done, and that research shows that there are some natural developmental processes in children that affect their academic achievement, and those four areas are their socio-cultural, which includes their emotional, linguistic, cognitive, and their academic development. Dual language education closes the gap on all of those four, and it occurs in both languages with the continual reinforcement over the duration, the length of time of the program. It definitely closes the gap on all four of those areas. Another part that they talked about was teacher creativity, that in a dual language program, the teachers have that room in order to refine their teaching and to find what teaching style works best for them so that they can make the content comprehensible to their students in both languages. The school has to be welcoming, and it has to break down those barriers that otherwise have existed in the past between that occur naturally in our society between people of different cultures, and especially when it's a minority and a majority culture, that those minority, the ones that belong to the minority culture, are able to come to the school and feel welcomed and feel that they are shareholders and active participants in the program. Dual language is designed for all students. It doesn't matter if you're a GT student, gifted and talented, if you're a normal student, or if you're a struggling student. Dual language is for all students. And a dual language program, it requires substantial planning. And that planning, when you do plan and you follow through with it, you use that collaboration between teachers, between all the different shareholders, that's when you will find your success, because it is better to have more people thinking and planning, then you will find the success that you need in the end. Thank you for listening to my presentation.